அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி தானி பெரும் கருணை அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி 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 தானி பெரும் கருணை அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி 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 தானி பெரும் கருணை அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி.
Good morning, everybody. Vanakkam. Very happy to join all of you in this Satvicharam. And, we're going to examine and discuss Vallalar notes of Vallalar's last talk given sometime in November 1873, 2 months or so before he decided to lock that door in Siddhi Valagam. And it is 145 years or so afterwards we still have the good fortune to examine these notes. Now, I did make a post on my blog, Samarasa Suddha Sanmargam blog, and I just noticed that the first couple of paragraphs seem to have disappeared, so I have to go in and edit and bring them back. In any case, I pointed out that these are notes. This is not written by Vallalar. And therefore, the first essential thing is we must know what Vallalar has said in the Arupparinjodi Agaval, in Jivakarnya Workam, and the Vinnapangal. Without that essential background knowledge, we will get confused by some of the things in these notes of Vallalar's last talk, which he gave to his friends and associates in Siddhi Valagam in 1873. So that's a very important point that we have to keep in mind. To understand and get the best out of these notes of Vallalar's last talk, or Perubadesam as it's called, we must have the essential background knowledge of the Jivakarunya Workam, the Vinnapangal, and Arupparinjodi Agaval. So I want to make that point really clear, even though I've repeated it. So having that background knowledge, then when we look at these notes, and I will be reading passages, and feel free to stop me at any time if you need clarifications. The way I approach this is informal Satvicharam, In the way Vallalar himself conducted some of his Satvicharam with those who were fortunate to be with him. As we know already from some of the indications left by others, particularly Thiruvur Velayudha Mudalyar, Vallalar was very, very authentic. Authenticity, being true to oneself, not being pretentious or dishonest and putting on airs like all these swamis and gurus are doing, that was not Vallalar's style. It was plain, simple, true, honest style, and that's why he discouraged and prevented people from adding the word swami to his name, because he said it is aravaram. Aravaram means pretension, ostentation, noise, So, I think, at least speaking for myself, try to do our best to follow Vallalar's simplicity and honesty. And so, in any case, keep it informal without need for any unnecessary formality here. So we look at these notes, and the first thing as we see, it starts, I also want to say that the notes do contain some confused and confusing statements, which I guess is understandable, when somebody is taking notes. And this actually, I'm not sure, because even Uran Adigal, who gives some historical notes to the different works of Vallalar, I tried to see if he had any notes on where this Perubadesam notes came from, and he has nothing about it. So perhaps some of you may know. If you know about it, please enlighten me, and I'll be grateful for any information you may have. It seems to have been included. It seems to have been included in different editions, starting from the earliest edition of Vallalar's writings. And we are, in any case, I think, fortunate to have these notes. They do contain some very valuable points, and even Uran Nadigal says that it does give us an idea of Vallalar's late final thoughts and realizations and advice. So it is a very important document, but its importance can only be understood if we have the background knowledge of Jivakarunyam and so forth, Vinappangal also. In fact, the Perubadesam does refer to a couple of things, including the Peruvinnappam and some verses and so forth, and we need to follow those references in order to get the most out of this very, very important talk. So with those preliminary remarks, let's take a look at the notes of Perubadesam. And we see that he starts by emphasizing Visaram. So the concept of Visaram is a very important concept. It is more or less clear, although there are some notes here in the Perubadesam that can cause some confusion or that can raise some questions for clarification. So as he says, Ingul Ningal Ellavarum Iduvaraikkum Irundadu Pol Iniyum Veenkalam Kazhittu Kondiraavirgal. That's always very good advice to us at any time in our lives. Idu Mudal Salaikku Aandavar Pogira. So now that's, you see, Salaikku Aandavar Pogira. Aandavar here clearly does not refer to Arupparinjodi because Arupparinjodi is everywhere, so there's no question of Arupparinjodi going from Sittivalagam to Salai. So Aandavar must refer to Vallalar. So we have to keep that in mind. Now in other places, of course, Aandavar does refer to Arupparinjodi. But when the notes say, Idu Mudal Salaikku Aandavar Pogira Pattu Dinamagiya Konjagalam Varayil, that Aandavar, I presume, has to be Vallalar. You know, whoever wrote these notes is referring to Vallalar by that term Aandavar. Ningal Ellavarum Nalla Visaranayil Irundu Kondirungal. அந்த விசாரணை எதுவென்றால் நம்முடைய நிலை எப்படிப்பட்டது. So this is the old, Socratic Greek philosopher Socrates. He said, know thyself, that is the first and last word of wisdom. And he said that is really the essential question of all philosophy, know thyself. Or what am I? Who am I? And that is what is being pointed out here by Vallalar. Nammuடைய நிலை எப்படிப்பட்டது. But it is not just understanding who we are, which includes psychology, but it is not restricted to psychology, because psychology just deals with, thought patterns, feeling patterns, and then if you have some conflicting feelings and so forth, then they say you have a psychological problem. And they get you to talk about it, and then they analyze it, and then they imagine that it goes away. But it does not, So there's something more is needed than just superficial psychological analysis. And psychology, of course, even in India, it's fashionable to say that, especially among these film stars and so forth, that they are seeking or they're seeing a therapist, or at least it used to be fashionable at some point. Maybe it's no longer fashionable. But therapy, has very, very limited value. And it's, again, connected to this point that self-inquiry, understanding oneself, goes beyond just understanding the mental patterns of thoughts and feelings and so on and so forth. நம்முடைய நிலை எப்படிப்பட்டது. So that's a deeper inquiry. But it's not only self-knowledge. Vallalar says, Namakku மேல் நம்மை அதிஷ்டிக்கின்ற தெய்வத்தினுடைய நிலை எப்படிப்பட்டது? So it is not only self-knowledge, but it is also, let's use the word God or the divine, knowledge of God or the divine. நமக்கு மேல் நம்மை அதிஷ்டிக்கின்ற தெய்வத்தினுடைய நிலை எப்படிப்பட்டது? So the self, as you know, the self, the Jivan soul is dependent. And the world and the individual soul or Jivan are both dependent always on Sivam or the Aruparanjori, the ultimate divine reality and power. So there is no way, if something is dependent on something else, for instance, the earth. The earth is held in its orbit by the sun. The sun plays a very important role in the development of life on earth, plants and so on and so forth. So in order to understand, we cannot really fully understand the earth unless we understand the sun and the earth's relationship to the sun. In just the same way, we cannot really understand who we are, what we are, etc., unless we understand the divine, Aruparinjodi, ultimate reality, on whom we are dependent every breath we take, every moment. So I think it's I think the notes are right on target here. And it's just my humble view is that, yes, this sounds like Vallalar, Not only self-inquiry, but also inquire into the nature of that on which the self is dependent. Namakku மேல் நம்மை அதிஷ்டிக்கின்ற தெய்வத்தினுடைய நிலை எப்படிப்பட்டது? So there are two sides of the same coin. And one side, of course, has priority, which is the inquiry into the nature of the divine. And as part of that inquiry, we read the Aruparinjodi Agavo. It tells us what the nature of the divine is. Namakku மேல் நம்மை அதிஷ்டிக்கின்ற தெய்வத்தினுடைய நிலை எப்படிப்பட்டது? It's fully explained, comprehensively, integrally explained in the Aruparinjodi Agavo and also in the Vinnapanga. Then Vallalar says that this inquiry can be conducted by an individual, himself or herself alone, or it can be conducted in association with others. So he allows for both possibilities, both alternatives here. And it's interesting, but if you want to inquire with others, it says here, உங்கள் அறிவிற்கும் ஒழுக்கத்துக்கும் ஒத்தவர்களுடன் கூடியாவது. So I guess that would mean here in Sanmargam, those who at least respect the fundamental values and principles of Sanmargam. If you go and try to carry on Satvicharam with somebody who has no interest in these things, or who might even be hostile or very skeptical about these things, they may mock at these things, then of course that's self-defeating, So we don't want to do that. Vallalar also says, Velayuda Mudaliyare Ketal Manushya Darat, or the notes say, Velayuda Mudaliyare Ketal Manushya Daratil Podumana Varil Soluvar. Very interesting. If Vallalar had said this, and I have a feeling he must have said this, Manushya Daratil Podumana Varil Soluvar, that means Vallalar has gone beyond this Manushya Dharam. And in fact, he says that later, according to the notes. The அறிவு இப்போது எனது அறிவு அண்டாண்டங்களுக்கு பால் கடந்திருக்கிறது. That's cosmic consciousness, to use a word that even Sri Aurobindo uses. But we can look into that later. But he says, so this reference to Velayuda Mudaliyare Ketal Manushya Daratil Podumana Varil Soluvar, there is a distinction between understanding this at a human level, as human beings, which is what we are now, but we have to keep in mind that there are higher levels of understanding. And as we evolve spiritually, those higher levels of understanding will become accessible to us. Just a point to keep in mind. Otherwise, we might end up thinking that the human level of understanding is the only level, And we know from the Agavo, human level is one of the very important levels, but it's not the only level. I mean, there are very many higher levels, including the levels of devas and so on and so forth. Okay. Then what is the point? What does this vicharam do, actually? What is its nature? Let me talk about that a little bit before we consider what its effects might be, or effects are likely to be. Later, the notes actually come back again to this vicharam. And the Vallalar talks about Anda Vicharam and Pinda Vicharam. And what is Anda Vicharam, as I explained in my blog post, it's the inquiry into the nature of the world around us, the universe. Let me find the part in the looking at the, okay, that's towards the end. அந்த விசாரம் செய்வது எப்படி என்றால், அண்டத்தில் சூரியன், சந்திரன், நட்சத்திரங்கள் இவைகள் எப்படிப்பட்டன? This is in 1873. And let us take note of the fact that, Vallalar didn't go to any college or university. He actually dropped out of school in his childhood. And we know from the Agaval and the Vinnapangal that everything that was worth learning was facilitated in his mind, with his understanding was facilitated by Arupperunjodi, And of course, Vallalar certainly had contacts with Tamil scholars and others. But as far as this kind of scientific approach is concerned, I'm not sure how we can really explain it in terms of his contact with scholars. And the specific way in which he talks about Anda Vicharam is very remarkable. And in my view, there is no other explanation for this than that Vallalar has achieved very, high level of understanding. As he puts it, the அறிவு இப்போது அண்டாண்டங்களுக்கு அப்பால் கடந்திருக்கிறது. Proof of that is that in 1873 he's talking about what we now call cosmology. In physics, the origin of the universe, the structure of the stars, because Vallalar says, அந்த விசாரம் செய்வது எப்படி என்றால், அண்டத்தில் சூரியன், சந்திரன், நட்சத்திரங்கள் இவைகள் எப்படிப்பட்டன? Investigating stellar nature, nature of stars and all that, Chandrasekhar, Subramaniam Chandrasekhar, got the Nobel Prize for his work on stellar structure and so forth. All that came later in the early 20th century. But Vallalar in 1873 already has a conception of what this inquiry is, cosmological inquiry. But the most significant item here is the words as follows. After saying, Andathul Suryan Sandiran Nachitrangal Ivaigal Yappadipattana, he goes on to say, Ivaigaludiya Surupa Rupa Subhavam Enna. So we have to, of course, read these things very carefully, in order to understand what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, what we can say reasonably Vallalar might have said, or what we can say reasonably Vallalar couldn't have said, and so forth. Sarupa Rupa Subhavam, I explain it in my blog post there. Sorubam is essential structure. So you take water, its essential molecular structure is H2O. 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. So we say that's the essential structure. And then essential structure of humans is the particular, chromosomal structure and so forth. And then you can have the differences between male and female again in terms of chromosomal, genetic structure. That is essential structure. It is the essential constitution of something. So that is Sorubam. Then he says Rupam. And Rupam, the way I have interpreted it in this blog post, is form, and beauty of form. So you look at a flower, it has a certain form with colors, but it's not just bland, it's also beautiful. So very interesting concept, Rupam, is you examine form and beauty of form. And in fact, in 21st century biology, there is this new science, it's called Evo-Devo. That is EVODEVO. Evo-Devo is all about forms, biological forms. Why does the giraffe have that kind of biological form? Why does the elephant have that kind of biological form? And others have looked at forms in crystals and snowflakes and so on and so forth. So the investigation of form is a very, very important and very developed and developing branch of science. But it's astonishing that in 1873, sitting in Metukuppam, surrounded by people who may not even have understood his Tamil words, because, Vallalar's level of Tamil was extraordinarily high. And he never cheapened things or dumbed things down for the masses, although he tried to be simple. But, some things are in their very nature complex. So you have to use words that will be a little complex, as we know also from Arupparanjodi, Agaval, and also the Vinnapangal. But very interesting that he is using the word Rupam in 1873. When the form and beauty of form is the main object of inquiry in this new branch of biology, and it's also there in other sciences. Then he mentions Subhavam. That I interpret that as inherent tendencies or dispositions. So it's the Subhavam of Manidan to think and speak. It's the Subhavam of an eye or dog to bark. It's the Subhavam of a bird to fly and so forth. Inherent tendencies or dispositions. So Vallalar mentions that this Vicharam, under Vicharam, and it extends actually to all other forms of Vicharam too, consists in asking questions about essential structure or Swarupam. Or what is the essential structure of water, what exactly is heat? We know it's molecular motion and so forth. What is the essential structure of a star? And so on. Would depend on the gases which constitute the star and so forth. But we also look at the external or outward form, but also the beauty of the form. We also want to know, not only we want to know why does something have a particular form, like a giraffe, or cheetah, with all the spots, or the tiger with the stripes. But why does it have that kind of beautiful form when it could have been plain and perhaps even ugly? You see? Very, very important question to investigate. And, of course, Subhavam, inherent tendencies or dispositions. How does water behave in this temperature or that temperature? How does the solid form of water differ from the gaseous of water, and so on and so forth. You can go on and on. But this is essentially what Vallalar has given here. And I'm sure he must have said a lot of other things, and, people who listened, whatever they could understand, maybe took some notes. But we still have to be extremely grateful for whoever it was that took these notes. Swarupam, Rupam, and Subhavam, the inquiry into Swarupam, Rupam, and Subhavam is really the essence of science. And Vallalar said this in one sentence in 1873, sitting in Siddhivalagam in Metukuppam. It's amazing, astonishing, incredible. A little loss for words to describe how remarkable this is. And so this applies to the Andam, the sun, the moon, and the stars and so forth, but also to Pindam, which is what he talks about next, Pinda Vicharam. Pindam, and then if you look at the questions that he associates with Pinda Vicharam, திண்டத்தில் நாம் யார், இத்தேகத்தின் கண் புருவம் கைமூலம் இவைகளிலும் இவை போன்ற மற்ற இடங்களிலும் ரோமம் உண்டாவானேன், நெற்றி முதலான இடங்களில் அது தோன்றாதிருப்பதென்ன, கால் கைகளில் உள்ள விரல்களில் நகம் முளைத்தலும் அந்நகம் வளர்தலும் இவை போன்ற மற்ற தத்துவங்களின் அது சொரூப ரூப சுபாவங்களும் என்னவென்றும் பிண்ட விசாரம் செய்து கொண்டிருங்கள். So the same thing applied to fundamentally the human body. That's what these questions suggest. Focus on human anatomy, human physiology. Of course, we exist in this world because we have a body, and that body has an essential structure, genetics, but it also has form and beauty of form. Why does it have that form? And then subhavam, what are the inherent tendencies and dispositions? So it's essentially biology with the emphasis on human anatomy and physiology, which is what he's talking about here. Very remarkable, because these are the two fields in which so many advances have taken place. Physics or cosmology and biology, which of course is the basis for medicine and so forth. So very, very remarkable. And the lesson I take from this is continue with increasing our knowledge of science, understanding of science. That's what Vallalar is saying here, Now, there is something else that the notes say which raises a question. For instance, later on, he makes a distinction between Igaloga Vicharam and Paraloga Vicharam. And then he says that Vicharam is really Paraloga Vicharam or Paravicharam. Let me put it this way. Igam and Param. And he says the Vicharam, the real Vicharam is the Paravicharam. And if we ask what is this Paravicharam, this is about, it's the second question. As we know from the beginning, going back to the beginning, Namakku mel nammai adishtikindra deivathinuடைய நிலை எப்படிப்பட்டது? That is really the essence of Paravicharam. But then the question is, if he said that Igaloga Vicharam is not really Vicharam, so the passage goes, Avicharam param aparam என்று இரண்டு வகையாய் இருக்கின்றது. இவற்றில் பரம் பரலோக விசாரம், அபரம் இகலோக விசாரம். இவ்விரண்டில் இகலோக விசாரம் விசாரம் மல்ல. Well, I doubt, I think there's some confusion here in the note taker's mind. Because Vallalar has said also that Andavicharam and Pindavicharam are essential. Now, somebody could say, well, Andavicharam and Pindavicharam is Igaloga Vicharam. When you ask about Suryan, Chandiran, and Nakshatiram, and you're asking why the parts of the body, why the body has the features it has, right? Like, why don't we have hair on our forehead? This has to do really with genetics, and again, it's very astonishing. Vallalar is raising questions that are actually answered at the genetic level, because it's a genetic program that determines the features of the body. Why we have the eyes in certain places and nose in a particular place and ears in other places. It's all determined by the genetic program. So that's what Vallalar is pointing towards. If you ask these questions, why the nails grow and all that, you are going to ultimately go back to genetics, because that's where the answers are to be found. What is this? Isn't this Igaloga Vicharam? So, on the one hand, Andavicharam and Pindavicharam are recommended and really strongly emphasized, but those are actually forms of Igaloga Vicharam. On the other hand, the notes say that Vallalar said Igaloga Vicharam Vicharam alla. These two don't go together. I hope everyone sees the contradiction here. So the way out of this contradiction is by Igaloga Vicharam. Either, the way out of the contradiction is to say Vallalar couldn't have said that Igaloga Vicharam is not really Vicharam. But perhaps he said Vicharam includes Igaloga Vicharam of this particular sort. You see, we have to understand Igaloga Vicharam as an inquiry into Sarubam, Rubam, and Subhavam. It's not trying to find out the family affairs of the family living at the end of the street, So that kind of Igaloga, that's also a kind of lower level of Igaloga Vicharam, gossip, why they got divorced, that couple got divorced, or what happened with that person's sister and this and that, Maybe, that's how we have to take it. That's not the kind of Vicharam we are talking about. Vicharam is not analyzing all kinds of trivial worldly matters. Matters pertaining to Ponnasai, Mannasai, and Pennasai, or Anasai, as the case may be. That's not the kind of Vicharam Vallalar is talking about. So, if we take Igaloga Vicharam as Vicharam into matters that are governed by Mannasai, Ponnasai, and Pennasai, or Anasai, then yes, that is not going to help us. But if you take Igaloga Vicharam in a broad sense, or in a deeper sense, as inquiry into the nature of the world, Andangal, the nature of the Andam, and then the nature of the Pindam, which is physics, cosmology, and then biology, then Igaloga Vicharam is part of it, this Vicharam in Suddha Sanmargam. I hope I've made myself clear. So it all depends on how we understand Igaloga Vicharam. So otherwise, we'll get confused. On the one hand, he seems to be saying Igaloga Vicharam is not Vicharam, and then he's saying do Anda Vicharam and Pinda Vicharam, which are Igaloga Vicharams, So we have to understand what he is dismissing as Igaloga Vicharam is Vicharam into worldly matters, matters as to how to gain more money or more land or how to have this enjoyment and that enjoyment. That is not the kind of Vicharam we are going to focus on in Suddha Sanmargam. The Vicharam we are going to focus on is, of course, who are we, what is our nature. Part of that is actually Pinda Vicharam. And then Vicharam into the nature of God or divine reality, Arupurunjodi. That is also an essential part of Vicharam. And Vallalar does point out that this Vicharam removes suffering. That is an important benefit of it. But it also removes ignorance. And of course, they are related. It removes ignorance and thereby it removes suffering. Vicharam, it removes saram or suffering or dukkham, as he says. Any questions at this stage on Vallalar's concept of Vicharam?
No, Doctor. I think...
okay. Yeah, and it's also important to note that he says that if you continue, he's very emphatic that this Vicharam has to be done consistently. Idai vidadu nam Vichara vasattarai irukka vendiyadu. It has to be intensive and it has to be consistent. It's not just like some kind of hobby, And he says that if you do this Vicharam, it will generate some kind of spiritual psychic heat, which will help in spiritual development. That's really the essential point when he talks about Ushnam and so forth. Other kinds of things there which don't make sense. Yogigal Vanam Malai Murai Mudalevatrukku poi Nuru Ayiram Mudaliya Varshakalam, Ayiram Varsham and so on and so forth. Highly impossible. But yes, the Vicharam has that benefit of removing the ignorance, and that point is also put in terms of how the tirais will be removed. The screens obstructing our knowledge will be removed if we continue with this intensive Vicharam. Now, there is some confusion about the Tirais, and I mentioned this to Prasanna and also on my blog post. The notes talk about how the first screen is green. But just look at the Arupparanjodi Agaval. And in fact, there is a mention in the notes themselves mention that more information on these screens can be found in the Agaval. You know, if you look at the Agaval, you can learn more about these screens. Yes, it says, Ittiraigalin Vivarathai Arupparanjodi Agavalil Kandu Unarga. So that's very interesting that Vallalar refers to other works of his in this talk. So the first screen is, as you know, from the Agaval verse, Karaivan Mamai Karumberun Tirayal Arisadu Marikum Arupparanjodi. It's the black screen of infinite matter, you know. And in fact, now in physics, they say that most of the matter in the universe, we don't know what it is or where it is. And that's why it's called dark matter. It's very interesting. They use the word dark matter. That is actually the stuff of most of the universe. And I think there is some kind of association between Karaivan Mamaye Karumberundirayal Arisadumarikum Arupparanjodi and this dark matter, which is essentially what the universe is made of, but they have no clue as to what it is. You know, I guess that's why they called it dark matter. There are some theories and hypotheses about what it is and so forth, but I think it may well be the screen that is hiding the Arasu of Arupparanjodi. So it's the black screen that's the first one, and the notes become really confused about the screens, which again, you know, is the fault of whoever who was taking the notes, or he may have only recollected it later and written it down. But in any case, you know, he still did us a great favor by, by recording this, these observations of Vallalar as he was able to recollect them. So on that point of Vicharam again is a central point in the last talk of Vallalar. Yes, I mean, that is also the spirit of Vallalar's approach and the spirit of Sudarshan Margam. It's Visaram, you know, we're not, going to be running around proclaiming dogmas, you know, and closing our eyes to science and all that. That is not part of the spirit of Sudarshan Margam. The contrast is with all these religious fundamentalists, you know, whether in India or Islam, Muslim world, or Christian fundamentalists and so forth. They don't have any respect for science. They're very anti-scientific. They think that everything is all said in the Bible or the Quran or the Vedas or whatever it is, and close their eyes to all the wonders that are revealed by scientific inquiry. That is not the approach we take in Sudarshan Margam, which is essentially, Sudarshan Margam, it's not a religion. Sudarshan Margam is not a samayam. It's not a madam. Sudarshan Margam is essentially a system of values and a way of living, and of course a certain outlook, which is based on the Jivakarnya Workam and Arupparanjodi Agaval, you know. So we have to be very careful not to turn Sudarshan Margam into a samayam or madam, or give the impression that it's a samayam or madam, you know. Because when we do that, we open ourselves to the objection that if you say that these other samayams and madams are false, what makes your samayam or madam true? You know, which is a good question that's going to be raised. But it's not a samayam or madam. It's neri, you know, and the Tamil word neri, of course, is a wonderful word. And it's a workam. Again, a very wonderful word because there are so many nuances, you know. There is ethics, there is discipline, there is conduct. There's so many shades of meaning to the words neri and peruneri, sanmarga peruneri, and also workam, you know. So anyway, that's something to be addressed at some point later on. Moving on, if you don't have any questions at this stage, the next thing I want to focus on is the criticism of the rejection, actually, of the Samayam and Madam, which I'm pretty sure came from Vallalar. There is, in fact, a reference to Perubadesam, and it fits in very well with Vallalar's remarks in the Perubadesam. So where do we start? Okay, we start the paragraph that starts with நாமும் முன்பார்த்தும் கேட்டும் லட்சியம் வைத்துக் கொண்டிருந்த வேதம் ஆகமம் புராணம் இதிகாசம் முதலிய கலைகள் எதனிலும் லட்சியம் வைக்க வேண்டாம். These are going to be very shocking to many people, particularly in India or even any other place too, because it's not just Saivam, Vainamam, Bauddham and Samanam, which is Buddhism and Jainism, but I think it's Judaism, Christianity and Islam. All of them are rejected. And the important question here is, why does Vallalar reject them? See, that's the central question. And there are a lot of answers in Jivakaranya Workam, implicitly suggested by Jivakaranya Workam and also by the Agaval. But the Vinapam is very direct. The Vinapams are very direct, especially Perubadesam. So let's look at the reasons. So first, what is he talking about? He is talking about Vedas, Agamas, Puranam, Idigasam, etc. He refers to them as Kalaigal. So that's again a very important and complex term in Tamil. But essentially it involves a strong element of imagination and verbal construction, play of language, like when you compose poetry and all that kind of stuff. So by using the word Kalai, what Vallalar is saying is that these Vedas and Puranas and Agamas and so forth, and there are innumerable, extensive numbers of them, they are all just the play of imagination and play of words and play on the meanings of words. And I think he's correct. I mean, this is a research project in itself, and I hope to do it to some extent in my blog, pointing out essentially the basis and the justification for Vallalar's criticisms. So the first thing we have to remember is they are Kalai. That means there's a strong element of imagination and verbal play, word play. You take some word and you improvise on it, and then you can add other words with it and improvise and so forth. And he's saying that's what all of these things contain. And he's right, because a lot of the analysis of the Vedas, for example, gets into the root meaning of the words. Philology, what's the root meaning of this word, and if you split this word in this way, it means this, and if you split it in some other way, it means something else, and then hair-splitting distinctions. Vallalar clearly points out, kalam illai. We don't have time for all these hair-splitting analysis. So anyway, let's look at the reasons as to why he thinks that we shouldn't have any lakshyam. That means we should not adopt their goals. Whatever their goals are, we should not have any commitment to them. Have some curiosity and study it perhaps, and even that you have to wonder if the time is worth it. But certainly Vallalar is rejecting the adoption of any of their goals or ideals. Edanilum lakshyam vaikka vendam. See, when you have a lakshyam means then you have the ideal or the goal or the purpose. So he's saying don't consider any of their goals or ideals. Why? ஏனென்றால் அவைகளில் ஒன்றிலாவது குழுவுக்குறி அன்றி தெய்வத்தை இன்னபடி என்றும் தெய்வத்தினுடைய உண்மை இன்னதென்றும் கொஞ்சமேனும் புறங்கவிய சொல்லாமல் மண்ணை போட்டு மறைத்து விட்டார்கள். That's the first reason. So there are two important words here, Perubadesam. And I find that the word Perubadesam means this, very interesting. I had to do some search to find it. I wasn't able to find it easily. குழுவுக்குறி என்பது ஒரு குறிப்பிட்ட துறையை சேர்ந்தவர் அல்லது ஒரு குறிப்பிட்ட குழுவினர் தங்களுக்குள் மட்டும் பொருள் விளங்கிக் கொள்ளும்படியாக பயன்படுத்தும் சொற்கள் ஆகும். Let me repeat that again. குழுவுக்குறி என்பது ஒரு குறிப்பிட்ட துறையை சேர்ந்தவர், some group of people who believe in some doctrine or the other, அல்லது ஒரு குறிப்பிட்ட குழுவினர் தங்களுக்குள் மட்டும் பொருள் விளங்கிக் கொள்ளும்படியாக பயன்படுத்தும் சொற்கள் ஆகும். In other words, it's like jargon. So, in economics, there are all these technical terms or high-sounding, big words and so forth. Some of them are essential and some of them are simply just big words for simple concepts, as many of us know, going through college courses. It's a lot of unnecessary big words. So, it's jargon that is intelligible only to the members of a particular group. So what he is saying here, the first criticism is, in all these Vedas, Agamas, Puranas and all so on, they're using a particular, what's called esoteric language, language with words whose meanings the people outside the group cannot easily understand. See? So it's group-based technical jargon, technical vocabulary. Technical means it's not going to be immediately understandable to the common person. That's exactly right. That's why, nobody can easily understand what these Vedas are saying unless it's some poems about, we want to live for 100 years with cows and sons and so forth. There are a lot of poems like that. Or some poem praising fire or rain and so on. Other than that, there's a lot of stuff, both in the Vedas and the Upanishads, that exactly fit the bill that Vallalar is showing us here. That is, it's jargon. There is some kind of vocabulary that's being used, words are being used whose meanings are not clear. And you have to go into what the beliefs of the groups are and how they interpret the words and so on and so forth. So that's what kuri means, is jargon. I would also say they're just using certain words by tradition. Traditionally, there are certain words that are used, and so they're also using it and repeating those words without really understanding whether they mean anything or what they mean. That's why the Charvakas, the materialist philosophers, criticized the Vedic priests. Let's not forget, they also invented all kinds of the caste system and all kinds of cruel rituals involving animal sacrifice and certain really obscene sexual rituals like the Aswamedha Yaga, where the queen was supposed to have sex with the horse and all that kind of stuff. So let's not idealize these things too much. We have to, and it's also true of the Bible and the Quran. They all have all kinds of ugly passages and absurd statements. And the Vallalar is pointing that out. But essentially, yes, there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of words that are not clear in their meaning. And then we are supposed to be spending years and years of our valuable time splitting our hairs and heads and each other's heads trying to understand what the words mean. So, Kuruvukandri Andri Devatai Innabadi Endrum Devathinudia Unmai Innadendrum Konjamenum Purangavya. So that word Purangavyam means all sides. You see, so comprehensive, clear and comprehensive way. They have not explained it. So again, this criticism needs to be developed, but I hope I've given you some idea of what this first criticism is. The second criticism is, he says, Purangavya sollamal mannai pottu maraithu vittargal. Yes, without giving a comprehensive, clear, comprehensive account, they have also obscured things, which follows from the first criticism. If you're using all these words whose meanings are not clear, then of course it's going to confuse people. Anumathiram menum therivikkamal pindalachanathai andathil kattinargal. That's the second criticism. And there's an example that's given. Kailasapadi endrum, Vaigundapadi endrum, Satyalogadipadi endrum, பெயரிட்டு இடம், வாகனம், ஆயுதம், வடிவம், ரூபம் முதலியவையும் ஒரு மனுஷனுக்கு அமைப்பது போல் அமைத்து உண்மையாக இருப்பதாக சொல்லி இருக்கின்றார்கள். தெய்வத்துக்கு கை, கால் முதலியன இருக்குமா என்று கேட்பவர்க்கு பதில் சொல்ல தெரியாது விழிக்கின்றார்கள். Again, 1873. This is actually the criticism made by a lot of 20th century, Vallalar and rationalists and atheists and so forth. But Vallalar has already given a really clear formulation of this criticism. It's they call it in philosophy, in the English language, anthropomorphism. That is projecting human-like characteristics on things that are not human. So, you project human-like characteristics on animals, and you say the dog has a lot of possum for me, or the dog was jealous, and so forth and so on, and it extends beyond animals to nature, We even say, இயற்கை இப்போ வந்து கோபமா இருக்கின்றது, பூமாதா or earth mother is angry and all that kind of stuff. So that's anthropomorphism, projecting human characteristics onto non-human realities when there's not any evidence to believe that those non-human realities have these human characteristics, and we can see how it's unreasonable when it comes to animal behavior. I mean, I'm not saying all animal behavior is like that. Certainly some animal behavior does resemble human behavior. I'm not disputing that. And animals do have emotions and all that. Animal psychologists have shown that. But there are many animal behaviors that you can't simply understand in human terms. If that's true of animals, then it's also true certainly of natural phenomena. Earthquakes and storms and so forth, they don't have any anger or anything like that. They're not targeting you specifically, So it becomes really unreasonable to attribute human characteristics to natural phenomena. Then how much more must it be the case when you're speaking of the divine reality? Yes, that's an excellent question. தெய்வத்துக்கு கை, கால் முதலியன இருக்குமா? Because கை, கால் is all body. It's a finite body that is subject to growth and decay. And how can Devam, considered as the ultimate reality, have hands and legs? Even a child can ask that question. But unfortunately, in these religions, it's taken for granted. And again, this is why in the Satya Jnana Sabai, you do not find anything with Kai, Kal, and so forth. Is there any representation with Kai and Kal in the Satya Jnana Sabai, either inside or outside? No, there's nothing. Is there any such representation in the Satya Dharma Salai? No. And of course, the Siddhivalagam doesn't have anything. He didn't have a Sivalingam there or Vinayagara and so forth. So these are all additions. These other people have done all these things as a matter, of course, of blindly following customs and, of course, sentimental attachment to customs and traditions. But we have to be honest. We have to be true to what Vallalar has said, We cannot distort it. If you say, someone can say they don't want to follow it, they don't understand it, that's fine, but we should not distort it. There is no question of Kaigal and all that in Devam in Sutta Sanmargam. And even the Devargal, Aivaradigal and so forth, that perform the functions of Paraithal, Kathal, Aithal, and Maraithal, and then Revelation, Telivathal, they don't have a hand and a leg and all that kind of stuff. So let me just, in this context, very quickly mention there was an atheist philosopher, a very prominent English philosopher, Alfred Ayer. He was a prominent atheist philosopher. And then he was hospitalized. And he had a near-death experience. They gave him some fish or something to eat, and it went the wrong way, and he choked, and he had cardiac arrest. And I think I mentioned it in one of my earlier blog posts. blog on Samarasa Sutta Sarmadam. So he choked and he went into cardiac arrest, and according to the doctors, he basically died for a few minutes because the heart stopped. But then he had this very vivid experience. He says the first thing he saw was a red light. And he felt intuitively that that red light was responsible for managing the universe. This is no surprise for those who are acquainted with Agaval. You know, Kakkun Talaivargal Paktala Koriyai, Akkura Kakku Marupuranjori, Padakkun Talaivargal, Kakkun Talaivargal, you know, Aittal Sei Talaivargal and their Andangal and so forth. This is not surprising at all. And it's very interesting that whatever this being was manifested in the form of a red light. And then he saw two other beings, and then this red light was communicating with those two other beings, asking them to fix space. You know, there was some problem in space, and the red light was ordering them to go and do their job, you see. Now, it doesn't come as any surprise to us because we know Sati Sattargal, Velinal Sattargal, Viyappuru Sattigal, and so forth. It's not surprising to those acquainted with the great revelations of the Arupuranjodi Agaval. But he was taken by surprise because he was an atheist. He didn't believe in even any kind of survival of consciousness after death. So, and in fact, he wrote an account of it, and then he said it had reduced his disbelief somewhat, and then that he was open now to some extent to consideration of the possibility that consciousness survives the death of the brain. But why I'm giving that really remarkable experience is there is no kai or call. So he did see some being, and he did see that he did understand immediately in his mind that this was managing space. You see, it was managing certain aspects of the universe, but there was no head or, mukh and misa and so forth. So we have some indication from these kinds of experiences that there is really no basis for projecting human characteristics. And the whole of Saivam and Vaishnavism and what you call traditional Hindu religion is all about that, you know, Pattikai, Pattikal and this and that and holding weapons and also very peculiar what's called colorism or racism there, color-based prejudice. You know, they're all portrayed as white. Very strange. And that's why, you know, I tried to find Vallalar was not white. You know, it's brown complexioned according to Velayuda Mudaliyar. And I think the best that I could come with, I have it in my blog, the Vallalar's picture, I think it comes from Tulsiram reconstruction. The Tulsiram who lived in Aurobindo Ashram and wrote some good works in English, although I think he mixed up a great deal of Sri Aurobindo's philosophy with the Vallalar's account, and I think that's only produced more confusion. And Vallalar's account stands on its own. It doesn't need support by mixing up with any other thing, any other philosophy. So, in any case, that's also another peculiar feature of showing the Pinda Lakshanam in Andam, you know. People prefer fair complexion or whatever, and then they are portraying all these gods as having fair complexion. You know, that's very strange. Any case, that's a very severe criticism, and it removes in one stroke belief that these gods and other beings exist with hands and legs and so forth. It's all gone. There is no beings like Vishnu holding some chakram and Shiva holding some trident and all that. All these are imaginations. Karpane Kalaigal. And then he points out there's a lot of people just simply repeated these things without thinking about them. இது உண்மையாக இருப்பதாகவே முன்னும் பின்னும் உள்ள பெரியவர்கள் என்று பெயரிட்டு கொண்டிருந்தவர்களும் உண்மையை அறியாது அப்படியே கண்ணை மூடிக்கொண்டு உளறி இருக்கின்றார்கள். Yeah, they just simply repeated these things. Whatever they learned from others, and their teachers repeated what they learned from their teachers and so forth. And nobody really bothered to ask this question. Devathukku kai kaal mudalina irukuma, you know, which you think even a child would be able to ask. Okay, and that's not again rejecting the reality of Devam. It's rejecting this particular childish conception of Devam. Then he goes on to say, so the third criticism is they're just simply repeating what has been passed down to them by tradition without really thinking critically or without examining them carefully. Then he goes on to, give another reason. There are other things that go off on a tangent, and this is again the note-taker's faults. But he does mention the Peruvinapam, as well as a line from one of the poems, Iyal Vedagamangal Puranangal Idigasam Ivai Mudala Indira Salangal Araya Uripar. Then he says, Sayalanaitum Aruloliyal Kanga. You know, so don't get confused by these Puranangal and Idigasas. You know, some of them really read like a pornography, actually. You know, you read some of those stories, you know, to be somewhat blunt. Why waste time with all this stuff? You know, Sayal Anaitum Aruloliyal Kanga. You know, one lifetime is not enough actually to explore the richness of the Jivakaranya Vartham and the Vinnapangal and the Arupurinjodi Agaval, and you know, whatever is compatible with that. And there is really no need to waste time and get confused by the Vedas and Agamas and Puranas and Idigasam and all that. Okay. Then he makes a point. Well, let's look at some other reasons, and then I'll come back to one really interesting point about grammar. But let's move on, and then remind me of time constraints. The fifth reason is given in a few paragraphs later on, where he says, Idupol Saivam Vainavam Mudaliya Samayangalilum. Is everybody with me?
Yes, Dr. We are.
Okay. Idupol Saivam Vainavam Mudaliya Samayangalilum Vedantam Siddhantam Mudaliya Madangalilum Lakshiyam Veka Vendam. So that's the key word, Lakshyam. You know, don't make any commitments to them. Don't pursue all the different goals and purposes that they advocate. And then he repeats, and it's repeated, Daivathai Patri Kuru Kuriyaga Kuritirikindradai Andri Purangaviya Sollavillai. Then he says, Avaru Pailuvomanal Namakku Kalamillai. Yes, when you actually look at all the different disciplines that are advocated, there is really no time for doing all of that stuff, you know, all these rituals, some rituals in the morning and some other ritual in the afternoon and some other ritual in the evening, and this and that and so on, pilgrimage, this, that and the other. There is really no time. Our life is short, our energies are limited, so we really have to focus on what is essential and what is most important and what is most beneficial. And all of those are contained in Samarasa Sutta Sarmargam, and a case can be made for that. That's a separate matter. Then he says, Yenenil avaigalilum at samaya madangalilum arpa prayojanam petrukolla kudume alladu ஒப்பற்ற பெரிய வாழ்வாகிய இயற்கை உண்மை என்னும் ஆன்மானுபவத்தை பெற்றுக்கொள்ளுகின்றதற்கு முடியாது. ஏனெனில் நமக்கு காலம் இல்லை. So that's another very important reason that Vallalar gives. Whatever it is that they are offering, in the scale, a true scale of value, they are all lower achievements. Arpa prayojanam. The benefits are all on a lower level, lower scale. And the great benefit that he has in mind, of course, it's there in the Jivakarnya Orkum, Perenba Labam, what is that? It's also there in the Vinnapangal and Arupuranjodi Agaval. Compared to that, whatever it is that all these Saivam, Vainamam, Vedantam, Siddhantam are advocating are all very lower level achievements. So that's what I'm getting out of this statement, Arpa Prayojanam. Then he goes on to give the final, not really the final, I would say the sixth main reason, which is Melum Ivaigalukkellam Sachi Nane Irukkindrain. நான் முதலில் சைவ சமயத்தில் லட்சியம் வைத்துக் கொண்டிருந்தது இவ்வளவு என்று அளவு சொல்ல முடியாது. Now we should be careful how to understand this. He was never orthodox in any manner. He never followed any caste rules and all this kind of stuff and what's called acharam and all that. But he did admire the poetry of the Saiva saints. He did go to the temples and compose hymns. That's all he's talking about here. He's not talking about, any practice of the acharam and other rituals and all that kind of stuff in Saivam. And I also want to point out one important thing here, which we can take it up maybe later, which is that he does mention this in the Peruvinapam. Peruvinapam, he says, வாலிப பருவம் தோன்றிய போதே சைவம் வைணவம் சமணம் பௌத்தம் முதலாக பல பெயர் கொண்டு பலபட விரிந்த அளவிருந்த சமயங்களும். This is a very, very important point. What do you mean by Hinduism? Are you talking about Saivism? Are you talking about Vaishnavism? Or are you talking about Shaktiism? Right? You're talking about Vedanta, Siddhanta, this, that, and the other. And even if you take Saivism, there are so many different schools of Saivism. There is Veera Saivism, right? There is Kashmir Saivism. There is Saiva Siddhanta. There is Gorakhnath Saivism, and so on and so forth. And if you take Vaishnavism, there is Brahma Sampradaya, there is Radha Vallabha, Rudra Sampradaya, there is, Vadagalai, there is Tengalai, there is Swaminarayan, Krishna, there is Vishnu, this, that, and the other. There is so many different, Palabada Virinda, there's so many sects, S-E-C-T-S, so many sects and subgroups, groups and subgroups, that once you start examining them, it's like a maze. You're going to get lost. Which Saivism you're going to follow? Kashmir Saivism or Saiva Siddhanta? And then if somebody says, follow the common things, then you have to search for the common things, and then you'll have differences. And then there's a debate about whether the differences are more important than the common things. And that's just two of them. Then you have the Kabbaligas and so forth that go into the graveyard and use skulls and all that. And then you have the Tantrikas and so on and so forth. So where does it end? This is also true of Judaism. It has, again, Orthodox, Unorthodox, and so many groups and divisions. We know in Christianity, there is Catholicism, Protestant, there is Baptist, this, that, and the other. Buddhism also got divided into Mahayana and Hinayana, and Mahayana again got divided into Tibetan Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, Japanese Zen Buddhism. The same thing for Jainism, Islam. You have Sunni and Shia and the Sufis. The Sunni and Shia are cutting each other's throats now in the Middle East because of the invasion of Iraq. Aggravated the problem. Before the invasion of U.S. invasion of Iraq, the Sunni-Shia conflict was not there, and now it's really a major feature of the Middle East. So which are you going to follow? So he's right on target when he says Pala Payar Kondu Palabada Virinda Alavaranda Samengalam, and then all the different things that they prescribe. You're going to be lost. And you're going to be confused. And that's a major criticism. But coming back to what he's saying here in the Vinapam, he's talking about his own example. And he's saying, நான் முதலில் சைவ சமயத்தில் லட்சியம் வைத்துக் கொண்டிருந்தது இவ்வளவு என்று அளவு சொல்ல முடியாது. அது பட்டணத்து சுவாமிகளுக்கும் வேலாயுத முதலியாருக்கும் இன்னும் சிலருக்கும் தெரியும். அந்த லட்சியம் இப்போது எப்படி போய்விட்டது பார்த்தீர்களா? That means he no longer has all that attachment. சமயம் குலமுதல் சார்பெல்லாம் விடுத்த அமயம் தோன்றிய அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி. As long as you are clinging to these traditions and their dogmas and their narrow conceptions of divine reality and all the divisions, social divisions that they create, which goes completely against Anmaneya Urumipadu, and that is why, Vallalar says at the end of the first Vinapam, very, very clearly and categorically, Prasanna has included that in the recitation, இது தொடங்கி எக்காலத்தும் சுத்த சன்மார்க்கத்தின் முக்கிய தடையாகிய சமயங்கள் மதங்கள் மார்க்கங்கள் என்பவற்றின் ஆச்சார சங்கற்ப விகற்பங்களும் வருணம் ஆசிரமம் முதலிய உலகாச்சார சங்கற்ப விகற்பங்களும் எங்கள் மனதிற் பற்றாவனம் அருள் செய்தல் வேண்டும். Why? Because சுத்த சன்மார்க்கத்தின் முக்கிய லட்சியமாகிய ஆன்மநேய ஒருமைப்பாட்டுரிமை எங்களுக்குள் எக்காலத்தும் எவ்விடத்தும் எவ்விதத்தும் எவ்வளவும் விலகாமல் நிறைந்து விளங்க செய்வதருள் வேண்டும். This is also emphasized in this Perubadesam. Dayavu, he says, to get the Dayavu you must have orumai. And he says, anyway, we'll come to that. He says what lifted him is Dayavu. So he had all this, he was interested in these things and he has given up all that. அப்படி லட்சியம் வைத்ததற்கு சாட்சி வேற வேண்டியதில்லை. நான் பாடியிருக்கின்ற திருவருட்பாவில் அடங்கியிருக்கின்ற ஸ்தோத்திரங்களே போதும். But even there, if you look at those poems, and I quoted in my blog the letter that he wrote where he talked about Irukkum Ratna Mudaliyar. He was giving the Siva mantra. This was in his early stages. But there again, you have to look at what is his conception of Siva. It is not about lingam and this and that. It's really about, he says here in one of the in the letters, நித்தியமாகியும் என்றும் ஒரு தன்மையுள்ளதாகியும் சச்சிதானந்த வடிவமாகியும் அகண்ட பரிபூர்ண வஸ்துவாகியும் விளங்கிய சிவமே நமக்கு பொருள். So that is same thing that he attributes to Arupperunjodi. That is Sachidananda or absolute being, consciousness, bliss, all pervasive, engum niraindulla, aandavar, whole or indivisible, and the only real or true substance, iyarkai unmai. You see? So even when he talked about Sivam, the fundamental conception did not change. It's the same conception of divine reality that you find in Arupperunjodi Agavu. But he says, if you look at the songs, you can understand that I was interested in the Saiva tradition. But நான் அவ்வளவு மிகுந்த அழுத்தம் எனக்கு அப்போது இருந்ததென்றால் அப்போது எனக்கு அவ்வளவு கொஞ்சம் அற்ப அறிவாக இருந்தது. Well, I would say again, the Vinnapams make it clear that he was never a practitioner of all the rituals and the caste codes and all that stuff. But he did visit the temples and all that. But even that he is saying was because he had not evolved spiritually. So that's again an interesting point. இப்போது ஆண்டவர் என்னை ஏறாத நிலை மேல் ஏற்றி இருக்கின்றார். எல்லாவற்றையும் விட்டுவிட்டதினால் வந்த லாபம் இது. So that is the same thing. சமயம் குலம் முதல் சார்பெல்லாம் விடுத்த அமயம் தோன்றிய அருட்பெருஞ்சோதி. So what do we have when we leave this samayam kula sarbala mudita? You become free, You become free, and it doesn't mean you have to be picking quarrels with other people who may be still attached to them. But you become independent, you become free, your mind is free to explore and develop and progress and broaden its horizons. And you are open to new things. See, you're not blocking your mind with all these superstitions and dogmas. That's the foremost benefit of leaving. And again, you become capable of realizing what I think is said in one of the Tamil works of poetry, Yadum Ure Yavarum Kelir. You see, Yadum Ure Yavarum Kelir, you cannot have that spirit, cosmopolitan spirit, if you have all these attachments to Samayam Kulam and so on and so forth. So it also makes you open to being a citizen of the world. That is part of this Anmaniya Urumaippadu. Being a citizen of the world is being able to relate in an open way. Doesn't mean stupidity, but in an open way, broad-minded way with all kinds of people in the world. And not just people, as we know, also towards trees and plants and animals. So truly a citizen of the world will be capable of proper relations with the rest of humanity and the rest of living beings. That is the great benefit that comes out of giving up all this attachment to narrow circles of caste and clan and community and religion and all that. But it's a very advanced level, It's easy to talk about it. And in 21st century, we can perhaps understand it and be a little sympathetic towards it, but doesn't mean it's easy to practice it, So, எல்லாவற்றையும் விட்டுவிட்டதனால் வந்த லாபம் இது, அதனால் நீங்களும் விட்டுவிட்டீர்களானால் என்னை போல் பெரிய லாபத்தை பெறுவீர்கள். Then he anticipates an objection that he attained this high state because of his past sympathy to Saivism. நான் அப்படி அந்த சமயத்தில் வைத்திருந்த லட்சியமே என்னை இந்த நிலையில் தூக்கிவிட்டதென்றாலோ, this is Vallalar, because as you know from the Jivakaranya Varukam, he anticipates questions and objections and replies. அந்த லட்சியம் தூக்கிவிடவில்லை. These are really key sentences here in these notes and the talk. என்னை இந்த இடத்திற்கு தூக்கிவிட்டது யாதெனில், அக்காலத்தினிலே எனக்கு தெரிவிக்க வேண்டியதை தெரிவித்தார் என்று வாசக பெருவிண்ணப்பம், that's பெருவிண்ணப்பம். But also he quotes these verses, கருணையும் சிவமே பொருள் என காணும் காட்சியும் பெருக மற்றெல்லாம் மருள் நெறி என நீ எனக்கு அறிவித்த வண்ணமே பெற்றிருக்கின்றேன். So that's the gist of it. Karunayum Sivame Porul. Sivam is the only Porul, and Sivam again is absolute reality. We're not talking about Sarai and the snakes and all that kind of stuff, or Sivalingam. We're talking about Paramporul, Sivam, the true meaning of Sivam. And Karunayum Sivame Porul ena kaanum kaatchi. And Kana Vendum endra lakshiyam. That's all that matters. And then he goes on to say, என்னை ஏறா நிலைமிசை ஏற்றிவிட்டது யாதெனில் தயவு. தயவு என்னும் கருணைதான் என்னை தூக்கிவிட்டது. This is Vallalar, absolutely no doubt. And then he says, and the dayavu, and I can end on this, although there are many other aspects which we can explore on another occasion, depending on Vallalar's grace. அந்த தயவுக்கு ஒருமை வர வேண்டும். அந்த ஒருமை இருந்தால்தான் தயவு வரும். So this is, and then he says, தயவு வந்தால்தான் பெரிய நிலை மேல் ஏறலாம். இப்போது என்னுடைய அறிவு அண்டாண்டங்களுக்கும் அப்பாலும் கடந்திருக்கின்றது. See, that's why he says, if you ask Velayuda Madhuyar, then he can explain it in Manushya Dharam. So only a person who has gone way past that Manushya Dharam is qualified to say that, you see. And we know Vallalar was never pretentious. So if he had said, Velayuda Madhuyar Eketa Manushya Dharatil, he can explain, that means he has gone beyond the Manushya Dharam. And the proof of it is, இப்போது என்னுடைய அறிவு அண்டாண்டங்களுக்கும் அப்பாலும் கடந்திருக்கின்றது. So, we are fortunate that 145 years later, we have still the opportunity, by divine grace, the notes were preserved, and we have some opportunity to have some understanding in the Manushya Dharam of what this all means. So, it's compassion, dayavu. And then he says, the dayavukku orumai vara vendum. So, that's really the gist of Sanmarga Varukam, What is this orumai? And you can see this orumai is explained in the Jiva Varukam and Anma Varukam. So as you know, Jiva Varukam, again, remember, it's 1873. Years, decades and decades before feminism and the women's movement and all that. Jiva, and the Varukam, the original description of the Varukams, apparently Vallalar had it written and posted or pasted on the walls of the Dharmasala. And I saw that too, the print of it when I was there in Dharmasala. And it says, Jiva Vorkamavadu Anmakkal Penmakkal முதலிய யாவர்களிடத்திலும் ஜாதி சமயம் மதம் ஆசிரமம் சூத்திரம் கோத்திரம் குலம் சாஸ்திர சம்பந்தம் தேச மார்க்கம் உயர்ந்தோர் தாழ்ந்தோர் என்னும் பேதம் நீங்கி எல்லாவரும் தமவர்களாய் சமத்தர் கொள்ளுவது. It's a kind of radical attitude of equality. 1873, again, you can only wonder at the level of understanding he had. And as he says, yes, it is Dayavu that lifted him to that. And to have that Dayavu, you must have that Urumai. And by Urumai, we're talking about Anmaneya Urumai Pada. And the Anmaneya Urumai Pada, I've tried to address it in some, small posts in the blog. You have to remove everything that kind of divides people, This doesn't mean you don't notice the differences. Yeah, of course, somebody is good and somebody is bad and somebody is cruel and somebody is compassionate. That's common sense. But you don't create a fundamental division on this basis. So if somebody has committed cruelty, some crime, they need to be punished. But the punishment has to be proportionate, and the punishment has to be governed ultimately by compassion. You don't want to torture the person because no good can come out of that. Ultimately, you want to get the person to see that they did something bad and change their nature, right? That should be the goal of punishment. So it's actually about rehabilitation. But it may require that the person be removed from society and be put in certain special settings and be given certain kinds of education and advice and so forth repeatedly. To get them to see that they did something bad and change themselves. Certainly that's the best approach to take. So you see the differences, but the differences should not cloud your mind and prevent it from understanding the underlying Anmaneya Urumai Paturumai. Everybody is a Jivan. That is a soul that has come into a body. பயிர்புரு கரணப்பரிசுகள் பற்பல உயிர் திரள் ஒன்றென அறிந்தமே சிவமே, So that is straight from Arutperenjodi. It's not any human being. These bodies are different, but the life is the same. The community of life is one community. Ondre Uirkulam. It's a very advanced level of understanding, and let's keep that as an idea. Not trying to get into Vaigundam or Kailasam and this, that, and the other. It's all become kind of meaningless. Let's keep this ideal, Anmaneya Urumai Pada, because Vallalar has said in his own words, the Dayavu lifted him up, and for that Dayavu, we need this Anmaneya Urumai Pada. We need to keep cultivating it. Now, I've explained it in some posts, and perhaps this can be taken up in a future session, but Anmaneya Urumai Pada certainly has a lot of dimensions to it, and there are a lot of questions and challenges raised, how do you deal with people that may be racist and so forth. We still have to, we don't want to descend to that level. It's very tempting, of course, when a racist attacks you or whatever, it's tempting to retaliate in the same way, but that's what we have to prevent. We have to fight against it, but we should not descend to that level of ignorance, So if somebody is making some comment...
Doctor,
yes, okay, so...
sorry to interrupt. I think we're hearing a lot of static from your phone.
Oh, okay.
Just started like 30 seconds back.
Yes, okay, sorry. What I was saying was, and I'm ending on this note, that the Anmaneya Urumai Pada is a very... central value in Sudasan Margam, and it has many dimensions, and we can take it up in a future discussion. But it's very clear in the last talk that Vallalar says that is the key. If you cultivate Anmaneya Urumai Pada, you will develop compassion, and that will take you. You see, that will take you to the highest levels. Some people I've noticed on the online somewhere, someone was asking, what is exactly Vallalar's sadhanam, and why are you all talking about Jiva Karnyam? That's all, doesn't know what he's saying. That is a kind of process of transformation, moral and spiritual transformation. It's not standing on your head and running around some hill and all that kind of stuff. It's learning how to deal with the beings in this world, that is, other human beings. What is the proper approach, And the proper approach, according to Siddha Sanmargam, is something that is based on compassion and that has its roots in Anmane Urmipadu. But that is one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is Sivame Porul Ennum Karuthu, or Arupparanjodiye Porul Ennum Karuthu. That is, the divine is the only true reality, you see. So, the whole of the Sanmarga Workam and the Perunari can be resolved into these two elements. One is the compassion based on Urumai, and the other is contemplation of Arupparanjodi as the true reality. So that's the Sanmarga Sadhanam, and I think that's what comes out of this last great talk by Vallalar in a very powerful way. So Arupparanjodi, Thaniparangarani, Arupparanjodi. Thank you so much. I'm sorry if I exceeded my allotted time.
No.